right, that you can do it, or reach out to Charlie, anybody that needs be to get the important people on the list. There's also a spot down there for topics. If they want to add topics, they can. So any of you guys that have anything that you want to see, I mean, it's your meeting, you know, in a lot of ways. So if there's something that you want expressed or relayed, please use that spot there to put some potential speakers on there. I want to thank Charlie Redmond. She's not here. I thought about it for a minute this morning, and I'm like, wow, she is a key component of this. She is crucial. We don't have her here today, but she does so much work behind the scenes to put this together, and she's not with us today, so we'll be excited to see her at the next one. She'll be back. She'll be here, but big thank you to Charlie for all the work that she does for this. We always thank our partners, the Carbon Emery County Commissioners, both of them. These guys are crucial. They're huge to what we do. The DNR as well, not only oil, gas, and mining, but all entities of the DNR supports this. So it just doesn't work without the partners. SERDA is the obvious partner. These guys provide the building, they provide the snacks. From the beginning, anything that we've needed, SERDA's like, we'll do it. Jade Powell, Jerry Gamber, everybody here at SERDA, Paula Ingram, it's just no questions asked, they just take care of it. So none of this works without the amazing partners that we have. So Dusty Monks is here as well. We're happy to have his support on this meeting. He does a ton. So I could spend 20 minutes going around the room thanking each individual, but these are some of the crucial people that make this work. So we've, the schedule today shows at 10 o'clock that we'll have emergency management. We had to make a last second switch, which is no big deal. So if it goes off schedule, there's a reason for it. We're gonna move the 11:30 presentation, which will actually be done by Bart, Kettle. We're gonna move it up to 10 o'clock. We'll simply switch those two to make some accommodations. So with all of that, that's enough from me. Commissioner Jensen is here with Carbon County. I thank you ahead of time. These guys, again, I will take 10 seconds. The commissioners, I had no idea. We all just want to yell at them and be mad at them, but wow, where would we be without them? The work that they put in. I've seen what you guys go through, and it's amazing. So thank you, Commissioner Jensen, for being here. I'll turn the time over to him to talk about the Ridge Road project.
I don't have any. Well, thanks. We have been pretty busy. The Ridge Road area we've highlighted as a key area for any industrial growth, particularly because there's a rail spur that comes into that area. And if you're familiar at all with the area, Savage has their coal load out there to load trains, with the coal market dropping off pretty heavily. We have decided to purchase a large farm in there with water. So we ended up with that purchase that happened a couple of weeks ago and finalized. There's 307 acres of property, and we ended up with 250 or 550 shares of reservoir water, which was significant in the potential need of industry for water use. So those things are in place. We hung on for a year and a half. We had received a approval for a grant to help purchase that property from the federal government, and as we got closer and closer to finding out the details of what that looked like if we took that grant money, the restrictions on leasing and selling property there became a real obstacle, and so we did not take the grant, and we ended up just purchasing the property. We have 3 companies that want to come. We're trying to, there are 2 of those companies would like a test project to begin with a small purchase of property. And then we have another company that is anxious to move ahead pretty quick as well. All 3 of those are things that we're not able to talk about yet, and but we are very encouraged by the interest that's being shown in that area. Our big concern really is the 307 acres seemed like a lot of ground until you start putting rail loops and rail sidings in, and the amount of ground that takes up, as well as the amount of ground that these industries would like to use. Yet it's encouraging that the Union Pacific has ownership of an alignment that goes south of the Ridge Road area to the Emery County line. There are areas south of Ridge Road that could be utilized as well for some industry. And I think you are all aware of the plight that our county has been in for about 7 years, where the loss of the power plant, the diminished value of the Sunnyside cogeneration power plant has dropped from about $20 million value to $3 because it was sold, and that sale price now becomes part of the deal. And what we've found is that as these coal mines close, we lose the value of the mine, but there's properties that are sold, like Sunnyside cogeneration power plant, and the new company takes on the responsibility of reclamation. And when they do that, the price is lowered down to basically nothing. And that now dictates the assessed value of the property moving forward. So state law doesn't help us very much with those kinds of projects. So we've lost a ton of value, and the tax burden then gets shifted over to our homeowners. And it appears like Carbon County is paying the highest tax of anyone in the state of Utah. So this effort to try to find industry to move here to help add more value to the tax base will make it easier for our homeowners. So that's our approach and our goal. We are, on a side note, the USU Eastern is setting up an additional program at our airport for the maintenance classes. They have those up in Logan, and they're going to open classes here as well, which requires a new hangar where they can work and hold their classes. And so the county has agreed to build a building. It's under construction right now. I appreciate the efforts of Jerry and Jade and their staff here at the AOG who have helped us find money to help build that building. We got into the tail end of that and realized that the buildings would have to have fire sprinkle systems installed, and the water system out there is inadequate to do that, so it's requiring another $2 million to put in a new water tank and a pump system that would supply the amount of water needed for the new building and any future growth there. So a couple things we're working on. Is there any questions this morning for me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jensen. I wonder if that's a relief when you get no questions, because you probably think, man, that leaves you wide open to absolutely anything. But thank you for what you brought and what you share with us. We appreciate it. We'll move forward with Southeastern Regional Development Agency, SERDA, of course. Their staff going to talk a little bit about a grant report. I'm assuming you'll be doing that, Jade? We'll get Jade Powell up here. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. First, I'm just introduce myself. I'm Jade Powell. I'm the Deputy Director here at the Southeastern Regional Development Agency. At the last collaborative meeting that we had a couple months ago, I reported on 2 funding opportunities that we were working on. One being the repurposing energy assets in coal communities ran by Energywerx, and then the other one being the community's local energy action plan. These two grant opportunities are helping us build capacity and build a strategic plan moving forward on our diversification strategy, specifically in the energy sector. And so a lot of it came down to a lot of stakeholder meetings, a lot of data collection, and then seeing how those 2 things merge together and helping us form a path forward. So today, when I reported on that a couple months ago, we were just beginning CLEAP. We had been in conversations with them, identifying our scope of work and kind of getting that nailed down. And then we were just wrapping up the Energywerx grant, and we had a draft plan, a draft video, 2 of the outcomes that the Department of Energy wanted to see, a final report and a video. I'm happy to say that we have the final report submitted to the Department of Energy, and they've approved it, and we've submitted the video, and that's been approved as well by the Department of Energy. So today, that's what we're giving an update on, reviewing the final report and the findings, as well as the video. I will say on the CLEAP, we're getting really, really close to finalizing that scope of work. It's basically come down to 3 different sections. Currently, 1 being an energy analysis, 2 being a workforce development strategy, and 3 being a community and benefits and needs analysis. And then within there's a couple different subcategories. And so we're still in negotiations with NREL, who will then assign us to different national labs to do the actual technical assistance on those 3 different topics. And so as that project progresses, we'll be around to report out on what our findings are. But for the sake of today, we're just going to talk about the Energywerx, repurposing energy assets opportunity, and the final deliverable and the kind of the base that was set for some of these future grants and opportunities that we're going to start to go. I've invited someone from the Utah Regional Growth Association who partnered with us on this project. His name's Connor Sorensen. He's the lead analyst for the association. And so with him, he'll actually be giving the report and showing us the video and talking about our findings. So thank you, and please welcome Connor up.
Hi, happy to be here. As Jade said, I kind of was part of the drafting team for this report. So first off, I want to show you guys the final video that we put together. That kind of leads into all of this, and then the boring slides come afterwards, and they go pretty quick after that.
Click the green triangle.
On this thing?
Carbon and Emery County, located in Utah's coal country, are currently facing a drastic change to their economy and way of life, and potentially devastating impacts on their future. Due to the assistance given to the region by capacity building for repurposing energy assets, funded by the Department of Energy and managed by Energywerx, the region has been able to have difficult conversations with stakeholders, perform an economic impact analysis, and plan for the future.
As a resident of Carbon County and the state representative for both Carbon and Emery County, I am grateful for any support to my home. This process has brought together a variety of stakeholders, elected officials, and industry leaders to find solutions that will chart a new future for our community.
During this process, the research team identified 4 different opportunities to help Carbon and Emery County transition away from coal reliance and diversify their economies. Opportunity number 1, advancing nuclear development, specifically at the Hunter Power Plant located in Emery County. This plant has been deemed a suitable location for nuclear conversion in the ORSA GE model. By engaging in site permitting and skilling up the local workforce, this plant will be ready to welcome the transition to nuclear energy.
My family immigrated to Carbon County from Greece for the mining opportunities here in our area. I've worked at both the Hunter and Huntington power plants in Emery County for the last 45 years. I also serve as the mayor of Price City in Carbon County. I ran for mayor because I could feel the strain of closing mines and power plants. I saw that we needed to begin planning for our future. The next generation and those currently in the workforce are afraid and uncertain of their future. I am grateful for projects like this that are charting a course for our community. Retrofitting the coal-fired power plants for nuclear capabilities will not only give the next generation more opportunities, but also help those who are currently in the workforce.
Opportunity number 2, carbon capture. 2 injection sites were evaluated, the primary site located west of Castledale in the Buzzards Bench gas field, and a secondary site just south of Price in the Drunkards Wash gas field. Results indicate that the area can not only store 46 million metric tons of anthropogenic CO2, meeting the project goals, but has the capacity to securely store at least 1.3 billion tons of CO2, suggesting the injection site and surrounding geology are suitable locations for commercial-scale GCS.
My name is Andrew Fry. I am a professor in chemical engineering at Brigham Young University. I also act as a consultant for the Utah San Rafael Energy Lab. I've been working in the energy industry for over 25 years. We're doing some really interesting work at the Utah San Rafael Energy Lab related to making fossil fuel powered electric generators more relevant in the future in a carbon constrained world. One area that we're working in heavily is the coupling of carbon sequestration technologies with existing fossil-fired utility boilers. What that really means is taking CO2 out of the flue gas and pushing it into geologic sequestration formations underground. This kind of technology is really important for fossil fuel-fired utility boilers because we will likely need them in the future before other technologies are ready to take over. And in order to reduce our emissions and meet our expectations and goals as a society, we need new technologies to do this.
Opportunity number 3, redevelopment of coal assets into different industries. The region has many valuable assets that can be utilized or redeveloped by new industries that are interested in establishing operations in the region. These assets include the Carbon County Airport, transmission lines, coal plants, railroads, and highly skilled workforce.
My family and I started Intermountain Electronics in 1985. We began as a supplier of electrical distribution equipment, primarily for the mining industry. Over the years, we have expanded our offering and have begun to serve other industries. Our company adapted and evolved with the changing economic outlook of the region. As our community faces the challenges of closing coal mines and power plants, we need to be ready to support the next generation.
I'm second generation Intermountain Electronics. I was born and raised in Price, and I'm raising my family here now. Between my personal family, my work family, and my local community family, we're very passionate about helping the area be successful, and we're eager and enthusiastic about staying actively engaged with Carbon and Emery County to help in projects such as the redevelopment of local critical infrastructure assets like the airport, railroads, and upgrades to the grids.
I'm from Carbon County and started at Intermountain Electronics as an intern. Now, because of Intermountain Electronics internship and mentorship programs, I'm currently the COO. IE excels at finding, growing, and training local talent. As opportunities continue to diminish in our region, support from our local businesses and our community partners will be critical. Securing additional work opportunities to help transition this region will help others like me who love this area and want to work to support its growth and development.
Opportunity number 4. Microgrids. The fourth opportunity identified to help develop and transition the region's energy infrastructure is the implementation of microgrids as a community asset. Carbon and Emery counties are well positioned to become an energy hub. No project of this kind exists within the region. Because of the nature of the region, a microgrid will provide increased energy resilience, reduced energy costs, and provide much-needed additional power for proposed industrial parks and developments.
Our county's aging electrical distribution is a problem for the sustainability and future of our county. The system is 80+ years old in some areas and needs improvement. With new opportunities like microgrids, We will be able to increase energy independence, provide diversification of energy, and reduce future development and operating costs in project areas.
Through this assistance, the community is actively involved in planning for the future. With this support, hard conversations are starting to take place. While there is a lot of work to be done, this study is a step in the right direction of developing a long-term plan for an area that is in dire need of a vision for its future. Bringing together these community partners, developing strategies, and putting a focus on redeveloping the energy economy will ensure Carbon and Emery County make it through this generational shift with a brighter future ahead.
So the main purpose of that video is DOE requested it so they could show it to not only for DOE to make their program relevant to themselves, but also to show to Congress, to show your video to your congressional members and other members of Congress to share your story and show that there's active plans in place and the funds that they've given to the community are not going to waste, that these are conversations that are being had. So that was the main purpose of that video, and it's kind of my favorite part of the whole project. It took us a couple months to get everything put together, but it was pretty amazing. So now just going quickly into Energywerx. I know that a video took a lot of my time, so I'll go pretty quick through these slides now because it kind of covered most of it. But the primary purpose of Energywerx as a whole was to locate communities throughout the United States. We were part of a collaborative where the energy economies are changing, coal-fired plants are closing. And when we initially received this grant, the IRP had the coal-fired plants slated to close much earlier than the new IRP had. So once that IRP changed, it kind of changed our focus with this whole project because it gave us a little bit more time to discuss with DOE and Energywerx the goals for the community. So that is the main objective of this whole grant, was to try and illustrate, not only are the coal-fired plants closing, but there are plans in place. We know what happens when coal-fired plants close and coal mines close in this county because it's happened in Carbon County. But importantly, I want to talk about quickly how we might leverage Energywerx. So after conversations were had between, and we worked super closely with Dr. Andrew Fry, who was in the video, and Jade, of course. And the most important thing about this whole situation is that after conversations between Dr. Fry and BEMA, who is the head of this whole program, it became pretty clear that this could be a conduit for close to $65 billion in future investment into rural communities throughout the United States that are encountering the same situation that Carbon and Emery County are. So we really wanted to make sure we put our best foot forward with this whole project to make sure that we had everything put together, because this could possibly be a good conduit for more investment into the community into the future. So the overall methodology of this project was DOE really wanted to see this as kind of a from the ground up approach instead of, as we're used to, the government coming in and telling us how our community should be transitioning its economy. So our whole process with this was to make sure that we were talking with stakeholders very consistently to make sure that we understood where your priorities lied in this whole project. So we met with a variety of stakeholders to gain insight into what the opportunity zones are within the community, not just what the DOE wants to see, So from that, those four opportunity zones sprung up. And in addition to that, we wanted to illustrate to DOE an economic impact analysis of what is going to happen to the community when, eventually, if the IRP goes through and these coal-fired plants close without any transition to the local economies, what happens. And we already know what happens because it's happened in Carbon County after power plant closures in 2015. You felt the reduction in taxes from Pacific Core. And, we were able to illustrate those numbers to DOE so they could see that this is, this isn't a hypothetical, this is going to happen, and we know what this feels like. So with that, we wanted to make sure that we painted the whole picture for the DOE, that this is a, stakeholder-driven approach. We know what will happen, and not only that, we are actively planning for the future. We have these four opportunity zones that we feel like are our best chance as a community. So just moving in, this is the first opportunity zone that we talked about in the video quickly. As discussed, the primary site identified throughout this whole ordeal was the Hunter Power Plant. And so the point that we wanted to make to DOE was that there are active things that we can be doing in the near term that are not, we don't need to transition to nuclear right away. But what we do want to start doing is start doing some site permitting, because that does take a while, and the estimated timeline is about 3 to 5 years from application to submission. and the estimated cost of site permitting based on the most recent ESP will range between $50 to $100 million. So there's assistance needed there from DOE to start that process and with the state of Utah to get that site permitting done, and then also to be actively involved in developing the workforce. Interestingly enough, 70% of coal plant employees can be retrained on the job for nuclear development. So this is kind of a good process to upskill the workforce, and after having comprehensive conversations with the local university, Utah State University Eastern, they are, actively involved and want to be a part of that process to ensure that, we can upskill the workforce. And the whole point of this is just to show, when it's time to transition and retrofit the coal plant, that we're ready to go. We have the site permitting done, we have the workforce ready, and it's fully prepared. So, and not only that, you guys know this better than anybody, this is a energy community. So unlike a lot of communities nationwide, you guys are not afraid of nuclear development, which is one of the main hurdles in a lot of communities. So after meeting with community members and stakeholders, it's clear that this is there's broad support for nuclear development, which is exciting. Moving on to the next one. And so our next opportunity zone is carbon capture and sequestration, and this is looking at with the IRP updated and the coal-fired power plant slated for closure. That is concerning, but a more concerning issue that we're dealing with right now is that the EPA just issued a new rule that all coal-fired plants have to reduce emissions by 90% by 2039 if they want to maintain production. And of course, that could change with the new administration coming in, and hopefully so. But this opportunity directly encounters that, where we can take these emissions that are being deployed, and instead we can inject those into those sites that we're located through the carbon capture and sequestration process. And they're doing a lot of great work with this with the San Rafael Energy Center. Dr. Fry talked about that briefly in the video, but he is heavily involved in this, and this is a really exciting opportunity that we identified. And then obviously you guys know your assets better than anybody else, but redeveloping some of these important assets into different industries to further diversify the economy here within Carbon and Emery counties, which is just all, airports with the aircraft maintenance technician training facility and aviation campus, the transmission lines, the coal plants with carbon capture and sequestration, and also retrofitting for nuclear, and the railroad system here. And then the fourth opportunity identified was microgrids, which is kind of a newer and exciting idea, and DOE has kind of identified this. This was us kind of going around some of the DOE's identifications for rural communities, and we wanted to show them that we're excited about this opportunity as well. But they've shown interest in this and have given money to other local or rural communities for implementation of microgrids. And this is an interesting project, especially after the report this morning about Ridge Road. Because currently, we're dealing with an issue where we don't have enough transmission lines to get power to new industrial developments. Where microgrids could come in is they could be placed into these industrial developments and could be utilized as a community asset. And like I listed previously, the DOE's seen benefit and possibility of deploying these microgrids in rural or remote areas. So we wanted to be kind of inclusive of this idea. And BEMA, who's kind of the lead of this whole thing, sees this as a pretty major opportunity. So we're pretty excited about this one. But I know I went pretty quickly through that, but that's kind of a very brief overview of the report. I think the report's ready to be shown by everybody, right, Jade? It's published and ready to go. So for further details, it's all within the report, and that's been submitted to DOE and all that. But yeah, I think that's the very brief gist of the whole project.
You guys done a great job. Thank you. That video was put together very well along with all of it, so thank you. I want to ask everybody, we printed a sign-in sheet that kind of started on this side of the room. If you could make sure it goes across, everybody get your name and email on there if you would, and anybody that you want to add, please do. I'll gather these up on this side of the room at the end of the meeting if you'll pass those along. That moves us forward to our next presentation. This has been a big deal in Carbon County. It's been all over the news. You guys are probably all very aware of it, and I'm happy that we'll have Steve Fluke here to present on the Kenilworth coal fire mitigation efforts. We'll turn the time over to Steve.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Fluke, and I am the program manager for the Abandoned Mine Reclamation Program. And I'm here to talk about the Kenilworth fire. And the reason that our program works on this is that we have funding through the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation Enforcement. It's federal funding to do abandoned mine reclamation and cleanup, mine closures, and that sort of work. We prioritize on coal mine, and we also are charged with mine fires or fires that are associated with abandoned mines. So we do have funding for this kind of work. So that's the reason our program has been working on this. We're with the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. So I'm sure everybody here, obviously with this audience, you're familiar with the fire and where Kenilworth is. This is a kind of an oblique angle from a Google Earth image showing Kenilworth, and it's kind of faint, but in red there is the disturbed area from the old mine workings. We reclaimed those in 1983. You can see there's so that's the town of Kenilworth, and to the north of it is the mine workings. And, oops. There we go. There's a branch that goes up here. This is the old tramway, and then it has a dog leg, and it goes into a canyon toward the top below the letter R. Those are the original portals for the mine when it was opened in, I think, 2006 1906 or 1907, under the Independent Coal and Coke Company. So there are a couple of portals there. The mine fire is the yellow pin right here, and that was a breakout area. So there wasn't a road or anything leading to that. It was broken out from the mine. And I threw in a couple of historic photos. This is the tramway looking down from on top of the tramway toward Kenilworth. And then there's that little dog leg leading over to the portals. So the portals started up at that level, and the coal seam dips into the mountain. So as they progressed the mining, they eventually ended up driving a tunnel down below to intercept the mine workings, to help gravity work with them a little better. There's one of the portals that's up on top, and that's the Aberdeen coal seam, so it's a 22-foot thick coal seam. And so we were made aware of smoke coming out of this area where the main vent is now in 2021. It didn't have a lot of surface expression at that time. It was just a little bit of smoke and a few fractures. And we added it to a list of mine fires, underground mine fires that we were monitoring. We were setting up a monitoring program with a consulting firm, Tetra Tech. And so we added that to this. There wasn't a lot for us to really do at the time. We wanted to keep an eye on it and make sure that, it didn't grow and start any wildfires or anything like that, but it didn't seem to, it was pretty benign at the time. And then in August of this year, August 16th, there were a lot of reports of smoke coming from the area. And we got up there with Forestry Fires and State Lands a few days later to check out the area, to grub out any vegetation, because we wanted to make sure that, that was the immediate concern, that if a vent opened up, could it ignite some vegetation up there and start a wildfire? Forestry Fires offered a helicopter and some crew, went up there and grubbed it out a little bit, and that's what the vent looked like at that time. It's about 10-foot diameter hole, and it's above the coal seam. There's a photo on the right is the crew grubbing things out. So here's what the coal seams look like there. The Aberdeen seam's on the bottom. The vent is above that, so the Aberdeen seam seems to be what's burning. And it's the Aberdeen, as I said, is 22 feet thick, so it's a pretty thick coal seam. So the rooms in there are, quite large, and there's a lot of opportunity for oxygen. And then above that is the Royal Blue coal seam, and it seems to be smoking some as well. And then the Kenilworth coal seam is on top of that, a massive sandstone layer. So all three of those were mined. They drifted up to the different, or inclined up to the different coal seams and mined them out. The mining is a good 7 square miles of mine workings in the mountain. So we wanted to treat this as an emergency to make sure it didn't get, out of hand or whatever. It wasn't smoking a whole lot at that time, but we were already setting up a contract with a consulting firm to start doing an investigation. We don't really have the manpower in our office to really focus on this, so that's why we outsourced that work with Brierley Associates, and they had a lot of good experience, and they rifled through all the mine maps they could get their hands on, and we identified, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is what happened. This is a video that Matt Morgan put together. Some of you may have seen it. We have it on our website. But this is as the coal fire started smoking quite a bit more. So as we were investigating it, this started smoking a lot more. So for those who haven't seen the fire, which I'm sure most everybody here have, pretty alarming, and there's quite a bit of smoke coming out now. This was sampled. It had about 2% oxygen and a lot of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen sulfide, so it's pretty toxic smoke for sure. Those first photos where they were grubbing out near the opening, the alarm, their meters would go off. Their 4-gas meters would go off some when they approached the vent hole, but it wasn't as toxic as it became. So we did emergency procurement. We set up some contracts after we did a little bit of investigation with Brierley. We came up with a scope of work and a plan to address the fire. We set up a contract with Brierley Associates. We were able to use our emergency procurement, which we were bypassing the state procurement rules, and we were able to get a contract signed relatively quickly. And the same thing, we were able to just select a contractor to do the work that we knew had experience instead of going through the normal bid process. So it expedited things quite a bit. But it still took us a couple of months to get our plan together and all the logistics and the safety and everything for the workers. They took a mine rescue safety course for a couple of days in Colorado before they went up there. And we were also able to use emergency funding through the Office of Surface Mining. And the funding we're using is from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law of 2021. So the emergency funding allowed us, or creating an emergency through the Office of Surface Mining, allowed us to bypass a lot of the NEPA and concurrence with SHPO and all the work we had to do before we usually get on the ground. So this is an overview map of the area. You can see, oops, wrong button. You can see a bit of helper here, and Kenilworth's just off the picture on the bottom. But I just wanted to show that the mine workings, as I said, are about 7 square miles. It'd be nice to have a mine map overlay here, but We did identify some portals over here from the mine maps, and even the Castlegate 2 mine, which is over here off of Highway 191. And they were intaking quite a bit of air. You could actually hear the air just sucking in. So our first course of action, we realized, was that we needed to go and plug off all these intakes and make sure that, just try to disrupt the flow of air going into the mine and then exhausting out of that vent hole. And then the other couple features here, there's what we call the east bench. So that's where the original portals were. And we found a subsidence hole there at one of the portals. So there were walls built in front of the portals by the mine when they closed down. And then we call that the west bench to the left of it, and that's where the vent is. This is looking at the west bench from Brierley, identified when they were up there, the main exhaust and all these different subsidence fractures and spots that were intaking, and the idea is to go out and seal up all of those portals and subsidence holes that are intaking air, and then go to the west bench after we take and work our way toward that west bench area and seal up these subsidence holes and vents. And they've actually just yesterday started injecting and addressing the main exhaust. So we started, I think the day before Thanksgiving, we sealed off the Castlegate 2 mine, the furthest portal and intake of air away. It's over 2 miles away from the vent area. So we sealed that up, and then last week we started with helicopter support to carry up equipment. We're using a urea silicate fire retardant foam to seal these up. And it's different than a polyurethane foam in that it can handle it has a really high flash point, so it can handle coal fire areas and can seal things up but not risk catching fire itself. But the polyurethane foam requires different mixers and a compressor, and it has an injection system and everything, so it's a lot of equipment to get up into these areas. Some of those, the Aberdeen portals that were off to the northwest of the vent, those are required one of them was I think a half a mile hike in, and the other is a couple miles hike in for the crew, but the helicopter was able to fly in the equipment in order to do the sealing of those. And now they're flying up equipment up to that west bench. So this is when they were at some of these subsidence areas in the old portals. They found fractures and identified them with smoke bombs, and was able to seal them up. There they are using the polyurethane, the urea silicate foam, which we had to get delivered from Kentucky. And this is a subsidence that accesses one of the old portals that's up on the east bench. So we were able to seal that up using the foam. And this is the other portal. When we got to that, that wall was constructed probably in the 70s or early 80s, I think. But they recognized that it was hot to the touch. So that infrared image on the bottom is showing that same portal. So the fire seems to be, we don't really know the extent of the fire. But there was also some, it was exhaling in fractures above the wall. And then there was some creosote staining on some of the fractures within the wall. So we kind of sealed it up with some of that with the foam. And so after sealing all these, this is from last Thursday, the smoke it's still smoking quite a bit, but it has dropped considerably. So right now they're up there on that bench, flying in equipment and crews, and they started sealing up that vent hole yesterday. And it's going to take quite a bit. We don't really know how much, but It's a good 8 to 10 feet down to the top of the coal seam from where the top of the vent is, and then it just opens up. We don't really know exactly the, what is going on, but I think it's opening up into the roof of the Aberdeen seam, and we'll just pump foam in there, and hopefully we'll be able to seal it off. And it's not intended to put the fire out. We're just trying to manage the smoke right now. So hopefully there will be long-lasting effects, on the smoke for the work we do. But we will need to address this fire in a more long-term manner. It will require an engineering investigation, and then we'll have to characterize the extent of the fire. So it's possible that this fire started 100 years ago. We don't really know. It could be a more recent fire, but there were reports from the early 1900s of fire in this portion of the mine, and they may have just sealed it off and kept mining. And it might have just reached the surface after all that time. But it'll be a multi-year effort for sure. It may involve drilling into the mountain to try to delineate the size and scope of the mine, and then coming up with some plan to mitigate. So that's really all I have. Are there any questions?
I actually have one, Steve.
Sure.
Is there any H2S levels at the point where it's coming out? Is there any at all?
Yes. Yeah, there's hydrogen sulfide. I don't remember the concentration, but it's high enough to, directly from the vent. None has been detected down in town, so the health department was down in town. They probably still are periodically taking air samples and just monitoring for any gases that might accumulate, I guess. But I guess it's far enough away. I mean, it's really affecting the town. There's the smell of the coal and the particulate matters are probably the biggest concern. I don't think there are any of the gases that reach, the volatiles that reach down to town. Yes, sir.
I say, did you say that once you seal it, you still don't believe it will extinguish the fire?
No, we don't. The intent isn't even to. We know fires are very difficult to put out. So the coal can spontaneously combust at temperatures as low as 125 degrees. So the mountain, if this coal fire has been burning for that long, the rock is hot. Even if you were to extinguish the actual fire, the embers, the burning coal itself, if you were to quench it, it still could reignite pretty easily just from the heat that's remaining. So those are the kind of things that we have to take into consideration in future work. The best way to put out a coal fire is to dig it out, expose the coal and just quench it in front of you, mixing it with dirt, diluting it, and quenching it with fire retardant foam and things like that.
Too bad you can't put some water lines in there and create some steam and generate some power.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, right?
Steve, if I might, just to kind of interject what Steve was saying, if you look at the classic fire triangle, it's fuel, oxygen, and temperature, and you think of the scenario that Steve's dealing with, isn't really able to control any one of those three. You have a big fuel supply in coal. As Steve laid out, you have a lot of temperature there, and then with 7 miles of mine workings, it's really difficult to control the oxygen component too.
Yeah,
so.
It's very difficult to control the oxygen. I think that's one of the biggest differences between a natural coal seam fire, which there are, we have several in the state of Utah, but they can only go so far into the mountain, especially here in Utah, because our coal seams tend to dip in, get pretty good cover pretty quickly. So we don't have a lot of fractures and subsidence that can, supply oxygen to the coal. But when you have big mine workings like this, you can have a lot of collapse, a lot more fractures, and a lot more opportunity for the air to make its way to where the fire is.
So do you know why this mine closed when it closed? Did it close because of that ongoing fire, or was it economic factors?
I'm not that familiar with it. There's probably people here that would know. I don't think it was from the fire, though. I haven't heard that. I think they just ran out of coal in that area for the mining that they were doing and moved on.
What is the risk of like collapse and then landslide issues?
We don't feel like it's a big risk that there will be collapsing and landslides because the coal is, well, it's been burning inside the mountain and it's finally just reached the surface. That's what we believe right now, at least. That's all things indicate that. But the coal seams dip into the mountain, and like I said, with that much cover, it's fairly stable in that respect. There are subsidence fractures around the fire area, but nothing to the extent that would create some sort of a landslide that we've seen. Well, we'll be looking at that as we investigate. Right now, we're just, this is an emergency action. We're trying to do everything we can right away.
So was that seam mined at one point in time?
Yes. Yeah, the Aberdeen seam was mined there. All three coal seams were mined in that area. There's not as much mining near the surface there because there was a lot of previously naturally burned coal, looking at the maps. So a lot of the coal was burned, and they didn't mine that area or near the surface in that area. They drove further into the mountain, but there was coal there, and they did mine over to where that breakout is and where the vent is. So that might be a factor that will help down the road, just the fact that a lot of the coal is probably burned already. All right, well, we look forward to hopefully being able to address this fire long term, but we do want to make the community know that we're working on this, and we appreciate all the help that we've gotten from the community. People have provided reports to us and just, I guess, helped us get the health department and the Division of Air Quality involved as well. So thanks for your time.
Great job, Steve. Thank you. I knew you'd have a lot of questions on that one. That's going to continue to be a concern for everybody in the county. We'll look forward to hopefully having an update maybe at the next collaborative from it. Hopefully everything will be moving forward at that point. I mentioned earlier that we were going to kind of switch the lineup a little bit. We're going to drop down to the 11:30 spot, but we moved it up. We're going to have Bart Kettle talk for a minute. Bart is the Deputy Director of the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, and he will speak on the regulatory status update.
Thank you, Travis. As everybody can see, I'm not Natasha, so I'm kind of starting out with two strikes against me. One is I'm not near as entertaining as Natasha. Two is I'm the only thing that's separating you from lunch. But the good news is I think I can avoid the third strike. My presentation should be shorter than the 30 minutes that was planned for this period of time. So with that, we'll get into the rulemaking update. The first one is the recycle rulemaking. This rulemaking came about as a result of HB 310 in the 2019 general session. And at a high level, what that bill said was that solid waste resulting from exploration and production waste in the oil and gas industry would be regulated by the Division of Waste Management and Radiation Control. And then correspondingly, in this last session, the 2024 session, HB 295 was a bill on how produced water could be used or reused and it directed the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining to regulate that. And so the recycle rulemaking is a result of those two bills. It's a process that we've been working on since, well, actually been working on for several years, but we've been working on the recycle rules for the past 9 months. We've gone through a pretty engaged stakeholder engagement through that process, and we think we've got a pretty good rule. It went before the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining at their regular scheduled December 4th hearing, and the board recommended that rule to go into the formal public comment process starting January 1st. So we're anticipating that this rule could be adopted as soon as the February board hearing. And the significance of this rule, just at a high level, because we're always wondering, why does this matter to me? The significance of this rulemaking is it's always been a little murky in Utah how you could use produced water or who owned it, what the rules of the game were. And HB 295 last year set up the state level policy that said, here's the general framework of how produced water can be used. And then the rulemaking that our Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining is undertaking right now gives operators the step-by-step of this is what you do to reuse produced water. We think this is a pretty exciting kind of opportunity in the state because it gives us the opportunity to take something that's long been considered kind of a waste or a problem or something to deal with and find a beneficial use for it. And if I could maybe just kind of put a plug at a high level, we face like a lot of problems, if you will, in the energy and the minerals world because we've been so successful and we've created so many opportunities. But I think one of the exciting developments is we're seeing lots of things that we considered a problem or a waste become a benefit now. And that's an interesting trend. We've just seen it the last few years. So, and this produced water bill and then corresponding the rulemaking represents that. The second thing that I want to update is the carbon sequestration rulemaking. And so this is a result of HB 244 in the 2022 general session. And essentially what that bill did is it said, here's the general frameworks of how carbon sequestration could work in the state of Utah. Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, go seek primacy for this from the Environmental Protection Agency. So currently, anybody who wants to take and do a carbon sequestration project in the state of Utah, they've got to work through the federal level on their permitting. Once the division gets primacy, then their applications would be handled and processed at the state level. And so we're about 1.5 years into that process right now. We're pretty far into it. We've got a draft rule. That draft rule's been ran through the initial review of stakeholders. It's been ran through an initial review by the EPA. And we've got a second rule that we're getting ready to distribute for kind of some informal review, and once we get past that step, we think we will be ready in 2025 to start the process of submitting the primacy application. So this is a pretty big step. Richard Powell, who's heading up this project's in the room, so he's gonna save me anywhere I mess up right here. But if I remember right, Richard, there's 4 states that currently have primacy? 3 states, and the 4th one working on it. Okay, 3 states that currently have primacy. There's a handful of states that are working on it, so it's kind of a new thing for states to get there. The primacy applications in the past have been taken kind of in the 5 to 7 year range, so it is a slow process. We're quite a ways into it. We're hopeful that we'll have that once again to the EPA this year, and then at that point, we've got to wait for their review. A couple other rulemakings that I wanted to update. One is oil and gas bond rulemaking. We think we're taking a really innovative approach on this one, where essentially what we're doing is trying to set up a base bond for operators to work within, and then a supplemental bond that's determined by how many idle wells they have in and the length of those wells. We're excited about this. We've got a lot of really good feedback from our stakeholders. But I must say, anytime you try to do something innovative, that means you're the first one to solve all the problems. And that means it's a little more difficult. So we're being careful working through this. We're trying our best to listen to the stakeholders. Our hope is that we can end up with a rule that does 2 parts. It enables industry to know how they function in the state and have a bonding requirement that's reasonable and they can have some influence over based on their operations. And then at the same time protects the state from potential liability of orphan wells. The oil and gas bonding rulemaking, we've been engaged with stakeholders for about 1.5 years on it. We feel like we're getting fairly close to kicking it to the board for the formal process, and we hope to do that here probably mid-year 2025. So it's progressing. Another regulatory thing we're working on, board printing. And so at a high level, the process for something to go before our Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining is some 40 years old. In that time, a lot of things have changed. Mostly that we've become very electronic. And so a board item may have hundreds of printed pages that is noticed to all folks. And this has become a little problematic where you may have as many as 500 people noticed on one board item, receiving 200 pages each. And so what we're doing is essentially taking and moving this notice process to a postcard so that they know, and giving them an electronic link where you have access to all the files rather than do the hard copies. Hard copies, once again, was something that was set out 40 years ago before the web was really available. Now we're trying to modernize it to the things that we have available to us today. And then the third rulemaking I just want to touch on, pollution control rulemaking. So this was a result of this last legislative session, and it directed the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining to make rules to accept pollution control applications. So pollution control is something that the industry's doing to prevent pollution for air or water, and they get a tax incentive from their severance tax for qualifying projects. We've completed that rulemaking. It was completed at the August board hearing and adopted. Currently, there is an electronic form online, so we're ready for submission. We have a person ready, and we are processing those at this point. And then I want to cover one more item before I step away. It's not so much a rulemaking, but it is of interest to the local area, and that is from HB 433, a study item from the last legislative session. And so that revolved around brine mining. And in October, the division presented to the legislature findings of that study that we've done the last year. And then at the November interims before the Natural Resource Subcommittee, Director Thomas presented to the legislature. And just at a high level, this is what it includes. So the brine study, the participants in it was a Division of Forestry, Fire, State Lands, Division of Water Rights, Department of Environmental Quality, Utah Trust Lands, Utah Geologic Survey, the Bureau of Land Management, and the division. And the intent of that study was to identify what needs there was for brine mining to occur in the state. One thing that we know, nobody really likes regulation. I know that as a regulator. I hear that somewhat often, actually. But the one thing we know is industry can't really move forward without certainty. We need to know. And the analogy I like to always give is a baseball analogy. If we're standing at the plate and we hit the ball, you run left or you run right. Well, we all know you run to first base. So it doesn't matter if you're a left-handed batter or a right-handed batter, you're running to first base. You just need that framework so we know which direction do we go. It might make the game a little funner if you just had a choice, but it would be pure chaos. So, and the same thing's true for industry. We just need a solid knowledge of what needs to happen. So the items that were, issues that were identified and studied was protecting correlative rights in brine mining because it's done in a fluid. So often when we think of mines, we think of solids like a coal or like a hard rock, but brine is in a fluid. Leases and royalties, transportation and disposal of brine, and how to coordinate with other agencies. And at a high level, what the study came up with is the various state agencies and their jurisdiction doesn't need changed. It's all applicable to brine mining. The one thing that was needed was statutory authority granted to the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining for regulation over the brine mining. And that would enable them to do some rulemaking to cover spacing, to cover pooling and unitization. And if there is a conflict of multiple mineral development, to solve those. Because when we talk about brine, a lot of times you may have, just a really easy example would be like, you may have a potential lithium resource and a potential potash resource in the same location. And you may have two owners that both have a right to that. And so you need to have a mechanism to where those two owners can access their mineral without being in conflict, and that's what multiple mineral development is. So we anticipate that there could be a bill this year in the legislative general session covering this, granting authority to the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining to start rulemaking on that. I guess more to come in January as we enter the session. But with that, that's all I have today. So I will field any questions if there are some.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thanks to the division for the efforts, particularly with this CO2 sequestration. It appears as we have conversations with folks who potentially would come to the area and locate here, that's a big thing that they need. And so once that is in place and there's a way to use this unique geology here to put that back down in the ground, I think that's going to make a big deal for our area. And I just wanted to say thanks for the efforts that you guys have put forth and made it a priority to push that forward and try to get primacy from the EPA.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Jensen. And just kind of for the group at a high level, what Commissioner Jensen's referencing is carbon sequestration may make specific sense here for a couple reasons. First, we have power plants, and they have some things they may need to deal with in the future. We have an energy resource here in coal and natural gas, obviously the rail and the highway. And then the third thing is our geology, where this valley, if you will, sits in kind of a trough, and you have thick layers, all the gray clay or blue clay, depending on which way you call it. We have around thick layers of impermeable layers underlined by sandstones with porosity. So all of those things kind of line up to make carbon sequestration potentially an attractive option here. Okay, thank you.
No further holdup. Let's go to a morning break. Let's take a good 20 minutes. This is a big, valuable part of what we're doing here. Take the time to answer your phone calls, do what you need to, talk with each other. Let's take 20 minutes and we'll be back. But on a good note, that gets you one step closer to lunch. Let's face that. We brought grogs back, so I'm excited we'll have grogs today. I'm not sure exactly what all specifically they're bringing, but I always get excited about having grogs, so they will be here momentarily. I think most everybody kind of filed in out of the hall. I was giving them a minute to finish getting here, but we'll move forward. I'm excited. I think everybody's ready to go. We talked about this a lot. Christine Watkins has jumped on with us with a little bit of the planning, and she's helped us with this process. It's been huge to have her help, so thank you. I'm going to turn the time over to Representative Christine Watkins to invite up some of our local elected officials, and let's have a chance to hear from some of those guys. So I'll turn the time over to Christine. Thank you.
See if I can do that. Welcome. We're glad you're here. I'm going to be talking about politics. I know that surprises you. And I will talk a little bit about the legislature too. But first of all, we just wanted to introduce to you some of our new people and let them come up just real quick. The first one I'm going to introduce is Commissioner-elect, not for very long, Jared Haddock here in Carbon County. So Jared, I'll have you come up real quick.
That got quiet quick, didn't it? Well, thank you all. I'm glad to be here. As you know, I'm a big proponent. I've been here for many years. I came here from originally from Colorado, Grand Junction, and just came here to go to school, College of Eastern Utah back in the day, and found my sweetheart and ended up being back here, and it's been the best decision I've made. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to come and serve the community here. So I'm just here, and we work with Christine, and grateful for her contribution. And basically, I'm just here and accessible. So anytime you need anything, happy to help. I'm a big proponent of what you're doing here. And also economic development. We were just talking about that, how important it is to, you're either green and growing or you're brown and dying. So thank you.
Thank you. The next one is we have a new mayor here in Carbon County, and I'm going to have him come up, and it's Mayor Jack Clark. I'm going to have him come up, and did I say the right name? Okay, you gave me a funny look, and I thought, did I say something wrong? Come on up, just tell him a few things that we've got going in Wellington and what your plans are.
I think I ended up with some bigger shoes than I can fill, but I was on city council for a couple years, and then appointed into the mayor position when the previous mayor had some medical issues with his family. So the plans we've been working on is we're coming to the end or tail end of water and sewer projects. It's improving the city. We've got a four-wheeler trail or UHV trail that's going from the park. It goes all the way to the end of town, hits Ridge Road, and can get on the Soldier Creek Road to 9 Mile. That'll be a wonderful project once we get that finished, that UHV trail. We just put in a camping site right there in the middle of the city where people can come camp. Beautiful facility. Lots of plans we're trying to build on. We got that fish pond that they put the pond. I've come to find out that the previous mayor, a couple of mayors ago, had bigger development errors, and we're excited to try and develop that. But like I say, big shoes to fill. We're trying to make everything work. The vibe in Wellington is a lot better vibe than it's been in a lot of years. So I'm glad to be able to serve there.
Thanks, Mayor. Okay, and I'm just going to give a shout out for a couple because I don't see, I've got one here, but the other two aren't here. We did invite Commissioner-elect Dennis Warwood from Emery County, and he said he was going to be here, but I don't see him. And so maybe we'll get a chance to introduce him later on. We also, Shauna Horrocks is the new mayor of Cleveland. She works here in our office, but she's learning how to be a mayor. It's been kind of fun to talk to her. And then we have Edward Bennett, and he's from Green River, and he's kind of like the city manager. And so he's new in that position, just don't normally would do that. But I do work with the city managers in my day job. And so just wanted to acknowledge him. So thank you for doing that, bringing a wealth of experience. And so, and then I want to talk just a little bit about the legislature. We've got our new committee assignments. I will still be the House Chair of the Economic Development Sub-Appropriation Committee. They actually took two committees, mine and another one, and took some of the state entities that we were over and created another one. And so, but I had the division, Workforce Services moved into mine, so that's going to be a big change in my committee, but it's also economic development in communities, which is right up my alley. So I'm really excited to have that. Still on natural resources, but have a new assignment, which is public utilities. I've not been on that, but I've been on a committee. It's a working committee with senators and representatives, started after the legislative session ended, talking about what bills, what rules can we change or laws to make things easier for the development of energy in the state of Utah. We've been pretty focused on nuclear, and as you saw, the governor wants to put a chunk of money in there, so we'll see what happens there when the money really, we find out how much we have. Senator Hinkins said he'd be here, but of course he's not here, but he's been put over as House Chair of, Senate Chair of the Natural Resources Appropriation, which he was before, so I'm glad to have him back there doing that. He's also on the Natural Resources Standing Committee, and then he's with, I think, Public Education. I think he's the Senate Chair, and on the committee, the Standing Committee. I'd have to double check. I thought he would be here, but so they did some switching around, not only in their leadership, but the committees they were on. So we're both on kind of different committees, but good ones that I think will really help our area. And we're sort of at a tipping point in how things are going to be happening for Carbon and Emery, and excited to be a part of that. We'll have a lot of bills, a lot of them are still protected, dealing with energy that will come out of this committee that I was on. And so can't talk to them about them yet because they're protected, but we will have a lot of those coming out, and we are trying really hard to make things easier, and of course with the new administration in Washington, D.C., I hope that'll even not just trickle, but I hope we have a big tsunami of taking away some of the regulations that we have. So any questions? If not, thank you to all our new people, and thank you.
Wow, you guys let her get off easy. I thought there was going to be a handful. That was surprising. Thank you very much, and thank you to the elected officials for being here. I can't imagine the job that you guys have. I mean, everybody knows you can't please everybody, and I think that's a position that they probably see it more than anyone. So everything that you guys go through is appreciated. There is another side to the coin of people just being upset with things that are going on. We see the work that you do. I see it for myself, so thank you. Moves us forward. We put a lot in putting this together with, I've had a lot of you come and talk to me about the excitement for the emergency management speakers that we have here today. This is an amazing group. I hope they utilize their time, which I know they will, and talk a lot about what they do and educate you guys on what they have. There's several people involved with this, but here today we do have Eric Wiedmeyer along with Whitney Coonrod. These guys are going to talk to us, so I'll turn the time over to them, and they definitely have a whole bunch going on, and hopefully you don't let them off with no questions.
Do we have to stand here? You do whatever you want. Microphone? You want a mic? Yeah, I'll take a mic. That'll be fine. You can run around. I like to run around. I don't stand still. Yep. Hopefully that doesn't inhibit the people from online from seeing what's going on. So Eric Wiedmeyer, so Division of Emergency Management is up in Taylorsville. We have an emergency operations center at the state capitol. In the past, we had one director and then one deputy. And just recently, they opened up a new position as a deputy director in the Division of Emergency Management, and I was able to apply for that job and got that. I come from a background in the military. I grew up in Cache Valley, went to Utah State, so not just part of the state, but, and then I joined the military, and I just retired from 34 years of military service. And my last 5 years in the military, I spent with domestic operations and helping the military support the communities and support the assets and resources that we have in the military to the local communities. And when this job came open in emergency management, I just felt it was a good transition from the military into supporting, continuing to support the state of Utah and the citizens of the great state of Utah. And so I'm glad to be able to be part of Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Management, and able to get out into the communities and support the communities of the great state of Utah. This is kind of what we look like overall. Director Hamlet, Chris Hamlet, has been with emergency management for 30 years. Judy Watanabe, the other deputy director, has also been with Division of Emergency Management for 30 years. They understand and know the state and the emergency management in and out. And I'm the new kid to the block in learning how emergency management works within the state and how we get out into the communities and help the communities. And then you see that we're broken up into 3 bureaus: Response Coordination Bureau, the Outreach Bureau, and Resilience Bureau. And the small chart on the side that's hard to see from probably everywhere in the room, but those are all the personnel we have that work for the Division of Emergency Management in trying to get out. And most often, where you'll see a lot of support out into the local communities from the division is in our mitigation and grants policy, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the program, is how do we get grants, how do we get funding out into the local community to support mitigation and response, and then recovery from any emergency that comes up. So the state's broken down. We have liaisons across the entire state that support, and they're from the local community, but then they work in a remote fashion for the state. And Whitney is one of those liaisons for us. She is the eyes and ears for Director Hamlet in understanding and knowing what's going on within the community. And we ask that, I know a lot of the emergency managers are gone right now, out in Florida and up at the Taylorsville building doing some other training. But they communicate from the communities up to WIT and then to Director Hamlet. And then that goes to Commissioner Anderson and then directly to the governor from there to get operations handled and response happening within the state. Kind of what the liaison does and how they work and function. They have a vehicle and they're traveling the whole region. They're traveling the state, trying to figure out what is going on and how to help and where to go. One of the huge things in emergency management and getting a response to happen quickly and to support the community is really, that second bullet down is knowing the team. And then I'm glad we had representatives from the commissioners and from the community on how do we handle an emergency, and how we handle really comes down to our relationships that we have before the emergency happens. And I know, so I think a lot of the discussion today we talked about between oil and the coal and that community, but within each one of those communities in the oil field and in the coal field, they have emergency managers within those organizations. And the more that I can get to know and WIC can get to know, even on not just the state side or the political side, the government side, but on our private partners, getting to know those emergency managers as well, and the plans that they have for emergency management will help the community overall in responding to an emergency. So what is the mission? You see the slide. Really, the emergency management is at the state level is there to coordinate the resources and assets that are across the state. So there's another slide later on I'll talk through, but all emergencies are local. They all happen at a local location and a local spot. And we try to get those to be managed at by the local government in the local community. But once that emergency goes big enough that multiple agencies are needed, the state helps coordinate and manage those, the resources. For an example, so go back to 2020, and we all hate the word COVID, but COVID's going on, the earthquake in Magna happens, the windstorms in Davis County happen, and at that time you have different resources that are being pulled from different locations and trying to figure out how to manage the wind debris cleanup in Davis County, how to manage debris cleanup for the Magna earthquake, and then you still have the COVID happening at the same time with social distancing and keeping that all apart. So the Division of Emergency Management helped step in and manage the different resources that the Guard had, resources that under contract, and then from UDOT, and getting into Davis County, getting into Magna, and help cleaning up and opening up the roadways for traffic to continue to move on and not inhibit local traffic from getting home, getting to work, and getting to wherever they needed to go at that time. So the state does that at the state level. We manage those assets across county borders and county lines, and then county emergency managers, so each county has their own emergency manager, and they help manage the resources and assets within that county. And then they make local agreements between other counties as well that will help manage from Carbon to Emery to Grand to San Juan and bring those resources and assets with mutual aid agreements to handle pre-planned responses. So this video, I think it's 7 minutes long, as we just said about that. I might stop it somewhere in between just to try to open up a little bit of discussion as we talk through that. But really this is for senior officials and management, for like a county commissioner, for mayors, to see how their role works in getting resources and assets down into their local community. So I'll stop this video.
Local elected and appointed officials play many important roles in supporting and leading their communities, from overseeing the day-to-day operations of the local government to setting budgets for critical community services. These senior officials also play a vital role in preparing for, responding to, and recovering from disasters. Over the past decade, a federal emergency has been declared in every state at least once. The need for effective emergency management leadership is everywhere. In many ways, senior officials can make or break the success of disaster operations. Their actions can reduce impacts and enhance positive outcomes for their residents, or contribute to inefficiencies and losses that greatly impact their community.
Disaster response and recovery are more effective when senior officials are familiar with emergency management processes and have established relationships with their community's emergency managers. For example, working with the emergency manager to establish mutual aid agreements to fill potential resource gaps can accelerate and enhance response efforts. For this reason, it is critical that senior officials understand their potential role in disaster preparedness and actively engage with emergency management before, during, and after disasters. Senior officials' roles can look quite different before, during, and after disasters. So let's explore further.
Senior officials' actions and decisions before disaster strikes play a critical role in the community's preparedness and resilience. While it may be difficult to focus on potential disasters during blue sky days, it is absolutely vital. Senior officials have many more opportunities for saving lives and protecting property before disaster strikes. To begin with, Senior officials can learn about the threats and hazards that may impact their community, such as floods, storms, earthquakes, and wildfires, as well as less predictable incidents like active shooters, technological hazards, extended power outages, or cyber incidents. Meeting regularly with the Community Emergency Manager is a great way to learn about a potential incident's impact on people, infrastructure, and the economy, and to stay informed of key risks. It is also important for senior officials to understand the demographic composition within their communities, such as historically underserved populations, tourist populations, individuals with disabilities, and others with access and functional needs, since they may require additional assistance during a disaster. Positioning and allocating necessary resources before an incident can accelerate support to these populations and reduce disaster impacts.
Other important steps senior officials can take before disaster strikes include working with the emergency manager to establish preparedness priorities and encourage all government agency heads, academic and nonprofit organizations, and business leaders to coordinate and collaborate on the jurisdiction's mitigation, response, and recovery planning efforts. Championing community risk reduction by adopting and implementing mitigation and climate.
Move the presentation back where it stopped. Is there a way to pause that presentation at all? Or no? So what we want to talk about really is, let's see if we get so what we really want to get to and look at is what are the emergencies that we see that happen in Emery and in Carbon County? What are, like, so Salt Lake County, we always talk about the earthquake, right? And everybody's concerned in that area about the great earthquake and the great shakeout. And as I looked at some of the seismology maps, there's more fault lines than I realized even down in these counties here. But what are the emergencies that you see here? That you think you'll see here, right?
I think I could think of one just off the top of my head. I know Helper gets those hailstorms really bad, and I mean, that's something that could potentially impact everything. That's the first one that comes to my mind.
Okay, so the hailstorms, and I've seen some of the pictures that come out of those. I don't know if you saw them a few years ago or not, but there's some big hail that comes through. There's a lot of damage to homes and property.
Local elected and appointed officials play many important roles in supporting and leading their communities, from overseeing.
Any others? Forest fires, yep. And so in Utah, we talk earthquake, but really our most
impacts in their community, people, outages, community, susceptible incidents, or disaster strikes. To begin with, senior officials can.
The most dangerous being that earthquake for a large population group with a lot of people that in those resident areas. But most common we have are the floods and the fires, and then windstorms. And that would come into on the hailstorm side of that too. So, but those are the things we see most common across the state of Utah. And how do we
learn about the threats and hazards that may impact their community, such as floods.
So I'll open that up.
Storm
Perspectives that you have out there. Do you know of plans that are out there for the community?
I know with the big rain and hail storms that we had this summer, Price City was able to get some emergency funding for that. But what they do is they do mitigation so that they try not to have it happen again. We can't stop Mother Nature, but we can try to mitigate when that water comes, where it goes, and because I'm surprised we didn't lose somebody because of how fast and furious that was. But I know they're working on that. I know they do that in Moab. Anywhere we have those, it's like, okay, this happened. How do we stop that?
And a lot of times in these areas here, those floods, I think, can come from the weather that is happening in some other part of the state, right? So you have some other part of the state or runoff from the snow melt from some other part of the state, and that runoff hits our waterways, and then you have that flooding someplace else. So that communication really between counties is important to know what's going on in certain areas, to be able to be ready for a flash flood downstream from wherever it might have been. And so those are the natural disasters. So go ahead forward a little bit more.
Storms, earthquakes, and wildfires, as well as less predictable incidents like active shooters, technological hazards, extended power outages, or cyber incidents. Geographic composition within their communities.
So a lot of times we talk about all the natural disasters that we have with Mother Nature coming in and hitting. But on that one talked about cyber, right? And cyber over the last few years for me, as I've done some studying through the military, is one of the key areas that I think we're behind on in the United States. And I think we need to get more involved in cyber. And how do we help our rural areas become cyber protected? And I don't know if you've ever thought about that or looked at that. We have assets within the military that, and in the state, that can come out and help provide support to local governments to help bolster their cyber. I know we have a commission on from the governor as well on the Grid Resiliency Committee, which we pull in private partners to look at our grid resiliency, and we pull in some of those oil and gas partners to find out how do we protect the state in those areas as well. So there's plans. So the state has plans for each one of these things that happen on the natural and on the man-made side of this. But the county does too. So each of the counties have their own emergency management plan that allows to keep that going. I'm gonna turn the time over to Whitney real quick, and then I'll close it up.
Hey, thank you guys. I know a few of you, and I recognize a lot of you from local emergency planning committees. I've seen a lot of you guys at the Carbon and Emery meetings that we have. They're usually done about, I think Emery does theirs they're supposed to be every quarter, but I think Emery's doing it every other month, and Carbon does it every quarter. So I recognize a lot of you from those meetings. So I want to talk to you a little bit. Let me get a gauge. Before today, how many of you have ever even heard about emergency management, let alone know what we do? Okay, so pretty good chunk. So in gray skies, there's two different, in the video it kind of talked about gray skies, blue skies. Let me get this. So blue skies, you've got an emergency manager in Carbon, Justin Needles. Danielle is here, she's his admin assistant. And then in Emery County, you guys have Jeremy Lake and Janalee Luke. So I know most of you probably know those two, or those four. But in gray skies, I want to talk about what we do in gray skies. So we talked about planning, Eric talked about planning. Carbon and Emery both just completed, it's actually at the state level right now, trying to get approved and sent on to FEMA for final approval, but they did just complete their hazard mitigation plans. So a lot of you have been in those conversations. They work with private sector a lot to get those plans. I know the Pipeline Association has been heavily involved with those. So those plans are near completion. We should have a completed plan of both of those by the end of May, I would say. It should be approved. So that's a one gray sky thing that we do. Other times, this was just November 16th, this one right here. Let me see. It said I could use this. This was a hazmat exercise that both Carbon and Emery did together. Justin talks a lot. He's an instructor he's part of the cadre, so he does a lot of education about emergency management. Carbon and Emery both just became storm ready, meaning that your communities are better prepared for a storm, even though we kind of live in a black hole as far as radar goes. We don't get the good radar that the Wasatch Front does, and it's because of where we are geographically located. Our topography just doesn't allow the radar to see what's hovering right over the top of us. Back. So more, you can see up here, this is training a couple years ago in Tavaputs down, it's actually in Emery County. And then just a lot of training, a lot of exercises, a lot of pre-planning. The things that Eric said that hit us most are the fires. And then post-wildfire, we get flooding. So that's a lot of our, a lot of plans and a lot of preparation and a lot of work go into making our communities more resilient. Okay, so in non-blue skies and gray skies, we have a lot of grants. This is kind of actually I should go back. Grants are part of our blue skies. That's what we do in a blue sky environment. So we have disaster and non-disaster grants. Many of our elected officials are familiar with our SHSP grant, which is the State Homeland Security Program grant. That's our biggest one that DEM funnels down to the locals. That covers your hazmat teams. That covers both Carbon and Emery have the regional hazmat team. This grant is what kind of bolsters that and keeps it maintained. Between the two counties, you have 16 technicians, 16 hazmat techs. That's probably applicable for some of you in the oil and gas industry. We can definitely help in those disasters that you have. They are technician level, so it's not just operations. We also do the emergency manager grant, the EMPG. So that's funding that is specifically for your emergency management program. So you commissioners that are in this room still, the EMPG grant goes to fund both of your Carbon and Emery emergency managers. It's a 50-50 grant match, so the county has to support that as well. But we do, through the division, we funnel down federal money to help bolster those programs. Also in the non-disaster grants, it's been a minute since Emery was probably the last one, and I think we got a Bear Fire agreement for the FMAG in, let's see, the Bear Fire was in 21, I believe. I think we got an FMAG for that one, and then Trail Mountain was the last one in Emery County that we got an FMAG for. So that's a disaster grant. That goes to support reseeding and any kind of economic impacts that the communities have had because of a fire. So public assistance, IA, individual assistance, those are all all disaster grants. A lot of times, let's just be honest, Carbon and Emery are not going to see those a whole lot. We did with COVID because we had a whole state that was going, and a whole nation going towards getting that funding. But we have to meet, if it's a disaster that just happens in Carbon and Emery counties, our local threshold is, Carbon's is 84,000. And then Emery's, I think, is roughly about there. I think it's maybe 76,000. So before we can even declare at the local level, we have to meet that threshold, right? That monetary threshold. That's not hard to make, but we send that to the state and the governor gets involved, but the state then has to make a threshold, which is 5.8 million. So that's a big lift for Carbon and Emery's, Carbon and Emery counties, if those are the only communities that were impacted. So I've been doing emergency management since 2012, and we've done, I think, 6 in my region, so Carbon, Emery, Grand, and San Juan. We've had 6 local disaster declarations. In that time, only one of them has gotten federally funded. So, not to say it won't happen, but it's very hard to meet that threshold for the IA and the PA. Let's see, let's go on. So talking about gray skies, this is where that PA money comes in, the IA money, potentially. Many of you may recognize these disasters. This fire right here, that was just last summer. It was in 2023. It was up on the Tavaputs. This one was, I think this is that same fire. This is just the geo-fencing of it. This was in 2022. That's like Highway 6 going out towards Green River, completely washed out because of the fire before that they had, and then we got a lot of flooding, that just flash flooding. This one is just last summer. This happened up UDOT. Dan was here earlier, but he would remember this well. This was an EWP project that some of you might be familiar with. They had come in and done a bunch of infrastructure on Highway 6 up the Spanish Fork Canyon, and then we got flooding, and it took out like $1.3 million of infrastructure. So those are the times when your emergency manager, when your commission, when we're looking at big emergencies going on in your communities. And they have to get involved and find out how we're going to fix it. This ended up being a UDOT issue mainly, but up the canyon, definitely Carbon County had a lot of investment in that. So this is a crude oil spill up Indian Canyon. It was on the Carbon County side, so Carbon County Hazmat responded. We ended up getting EPA involved. It was a big deal for about 3.5 weeks before we could get that cleaned up, because it did get into the waterway. So those are times that commission, the government, emergency management, private sector all need to come together, and so there is a process to do that. So that's kind of what emergency management does. We make chaos manageable. So let's see. I'll turn it back over to you for this portion.
So like we said before and earlier on, that locals are disasters are local, and it starts in the local community. So I missed the introductions because my calendar was inaccurate for myself. So can I get it real quick where everybody's from and what organization you represent, I guess? Yeah, we'll start here and then we'll just go back and then come back up.
Oil, gas, and mining coal program.
Okay. Okay.
Salt Lake, University of Utah.
Okay.
Here at SERDA.
Okay.
Congressional representative. I'm not him.
Yuma Basin Association of Governments in Roosevelt, Utah.
Okay.
And Jeremy Garlick, same place, UBAG.
Okay.
School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration.
Okay.
Same.
Same.
Author.
I'm with Emery Telecom, so we're on the LEPCs for communications.
Okay, well, I want to talk a little bit on the LEPC piece of that. So.
Southeast Utah Health Department.
Okay.
Southeast Utah Health Department.
Okay.
Public Lands Policy Coordinating Office.
Okay.
Mayor, Wellington City.
Okay.
Carbon County Emergency Management.
Hiram Price, Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining.
Jordan Leonard, Emery County Commission. Love LEPC meetings, so thank you.
Dal Gray, Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. I'm out of Emery County.
Okay.
Castledale City Mayor.
Emery County Business Chamber.
Emery County Public Lands.
Private sector oil and gas development, as well as the Utah Sheriff's Association.
Dusty Monks with the Utah Office of Energy Development. I'm a deputy there. I actually live in Duchesne County.
Okay.
Schofield Town.
Okay.
Schofield Town.
University of Utah.
Yeah, the Energy and Geoscience Institute, also at the University of Utah. And we're an Energy and Geoscience Institute.
Okay.
Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, located in Vernal.
Okay.
Urban Oil and Gas, local gas operator.
Yeah.
Salt Lake City, University of Utah.
State Rep.
City of Green River.
Uinta Basin Association of Governments, Roosevelt.
Uinta Basin Association of Governments.
Uinta Basin Association of Governments.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I apologize for going on, but really, there's a large group of people here that are from a big area that covers a lot of different things. So I was in Summit County last week at their LEPC, and we were talking through where does Summit County fit into emergency management and what are they doing, and I told them, and this is the same story I'm going to tell you, the same thing I tell you, is that in my perspective, in my mind, when Utah has that big, huge disaster in downtown Salt Lake area, your counties become key to getting resources into the Salt Lake area and supporting recovery and response in the Salt Lake area. If we're getting equipment and resources coming from Colorado into the Salt Lake, Utah County areas, then your counties become key in enabling and becoming probably logistical beds for getting things into the Salt Lake area because of the roads that come through your area. So I see you really, we look at, and I don't know how you all view the area in emergency management or in disasters, other than what we talked earlier on those floods and windstorms and then winter storms. But you're key to the management of the rest of the state of Utah, really, because of your thoroughfare of logistics. Any disaster or any operation that you go into, really, there's two things that cause that operation to fail. And what do you think those are? What was that? Communication. And one other one. What was that? Okay, lack of planning. Yeah, and that's good. There's one other one, though, that's key. Logistics, right? Yep. So lack of communication, lack of logistics, right? Or lack of a good logistics plan. Any operation that gets ahead of its logistics plan usually ends up failing along the way, somewhere along the way. And communication. So we need to, really, I see that we need to help the communications assets out here in your counties. And one of the key things I wanted to look at, too, is, so, and Whitney, you mentioned this, is that the counties that border Colorado, where do you get your information for weather from at the county level, do you think? Yes, local news and that stuff, but warnings and other type of information, where does that come from?
Bordering states.
What's that?
Is that what you're saying, on the state border?
Yeah, so the counties that border Colorado, those counties, where do they get their warnings for weather type related hazards come from?
Yeah, I would think that would have to come from the state of Colorado nearby, right? The nearest, closest, biggest city.
Yeah, so most of the state of Utah is covered by NOAA, the National Weather Association, right? And most of the state's covered by our local agency in Salt Lake area, except for the bordering Colorado counties get yours from Grand Junction, Colorado. And in order for those warnings to happen for those floods or bad weather coming in, the county emergency managers have to receive that from Grand Junction. And so one of my initiatives this next year is really to build up that communications flow of information from Grand Junction, Colorado, into the state of Utah, because unless Grand Junction, Colorado is communicating with your county emergency managers, the county commissioners, then that warning system for those flash floods, for the bad weather, is delayed. And then we're not mitigating life and safety for the citizens inside these counties. Whitney talked to this a little bit, local. So it starts at local. So a local declaration has to happen. So the county has to recognize that there's a disaster and declare a local disaster in the county. Then the state has to see that it's big enough that it affects more than just what the county can handle. And then the governor can then declare a state of emergency for that localized area as well. And then if it's big enough, 5.8 million is what you said, right? then the president can then declare a federal disaster for that local area within the state, and then that opens up the federal monies to come in and support recovery, mitigation, and part of the response thereon after. Who knows what the state disaster funds look like? Are there any state emergency funds, state funding money?
I would hope so. I would think so. I have no idea. I hope so.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a state disaster fund that is out there. And right now, going through legislation, they are trying to get, I can't talk numbers, I don't think, right now until it all passes and goes through. But they are trying to get more money down into the local disaster fund out of the state disaster fund. So once the state disaster fund hits a certain level of money, the excess of that money will then go into the local disaster fund money that will give money down to the locals to be able to request money from that through the Division of Emergency Management to support a state funding of mitigation down to that side of it. So how many federal disasters have been declared in Utah over the years? Big enough that the governor has said, hey, this is a state disaster, and then got big enough to where now it's a federal disaster, hitting those threshold of money funds. So I believe it was. No, it wasn't? It wasn't? It did not reach it?
So the one in 2022, because it was, sorry, yes, thank you. The one in 2022 was in with the Utah because we had the spring runoff, the spring flood, but Grand County was not part of that. So Grand did not get any federal funding from that grant. It was 2023 spring flood event. And then this last one that happened this summer, June 21st and sometime in August, September, those did not get qualified either. They exceeded Grand County's threshold, but they did not exceed the state of Utah's threshold. Marysville did, and so that's it was convoluted a little bit there because Marysville was happening at the same time, and that kind of fed into some of the Grand County, maybe we would meet that state threshold, but we did not, unfortunately.
Thanks. So Utah's had 16 disasters that they've claimed at the federal level, and then 11 of those are floods. So really, and we're looking at money coming into the state on the federal side as it comes from flooding because of the flooding hazard. And so for me, those are the most likely things I want to look at is where are those floods going to be and how do we get money to the counties where flooding is going to happen and going to be. Like I said, know your team. So getting out and I don't know that we've done what our job has been in getting out and visiting and meeting with our counterparts who are non-governmental, right? And getting out to the oil and the coal and the gas community and understanding what your emergency management plans are and trying to build those into and incorporate those into the county plans and then also bringing those county plans into the state plan overall. And we just finished up on the state side, we just finished up a state plan, and every 3 years we go through and we look at it. But like I said, my plan over the next couple years is really getting out into the communities, getting out into and visiting with and understanding where the communities are doing for emergency management, how we can help from a state level to get funding and resources down to you, and bringing in our partners from across the non-governmental lines. So knowing our team that we have before the emergency happens. The contact information we have for the LNOs that we have from the counties. Oh, these are the emergency managers. So the emergency managers from the different counties. And really, I encourage you all, even non-governmental, so oil, gas, coal, get to know and sit down and share your plans for emergencies with these personnel. I talked to Summit County. If you look at Summit County and how many crude oil lines come through Summit County and then down through the mouth of the canyon, and then you look at the mouth of the canyon and where the fault line is, like what happens when the earthquake hits there, or a landslide or a mudslide due to heavy runoff, whatever that might be. Was that due to the communication lines that run through that mouth of the canyon, and then also the crude oil lines? What does that do, and what does that cause right there at the mouth of Parley's Canyon? But so look at that here for if we're talking coal and oil here and those gas lines, where do those gas lines go? Where do they feed? And knowing where they feed and what populations they go to, and how do we mitigate natural hazards that could affect those? We said school. We had schools here, right? From the school. Oh, the lands for the schools. Okay. So I want to go back to the talking cyber piece of that. So a lot of people don't understand how many cyber attacks happen in the state of Utah. And I don't have the number off the top of my head, but there are hundreds, probably thousands of cyber attacks that happen in the state of Utah on school, health, and other public facilities that they don't have the facilities to be able to manage and help get cybersecurity that hold ransom information for our public and hold up healthcare for our public. So really, I think we need to look at the cyber side of this for within the community as well, and how do we help support cyber across the way. A couple of things I want to just finish up with is training. So the State Division of Emergency Management helps provide training. That's where some of the emergency managers are right now. They're at the Taylorsville building in getting training on how to manage crisis, how to manage emergencies. And we want to get more out into the community and train community on how to manage the crisis that happens, or the emergency that happens. So our initiative right now is to get Whitney trained on how to train, and then provide classes that happen down in San Juan, Carbon, and Emery, that you don't have to travel from here up to the Salt Lake area to get that training. We'll try to bring that training down to the local area. Liaisons, as I finish up, liaisons are important key to the state understanding what's going on. There's so many times we've had happen over the last few years where we have representatives call directly up to the governor's office, and then the information comes straight back down around to Commissioner Anderson and then Director Hamlet, asking questions about what's going on in this county. The more that we can get information flow up through Whitney and our LNOs and your relationships with her to feed her that information, really that's the faster that we're going to get support down to the community and support back into the local area. Because when information flow goes straight up to the governor's office, it still has to come back down to Commissioner Hamlet or Commissioner Anderson and Director Hamlet in order to start the flow and the process of getting those resources moving and pushed through. So Whitney is a huge asset for this area in getting information up. I already talked to Noah. So if you don't know, if you haven't looked at it, go to Utah Code 53. It talks emergency management. It talks the funding. It talks where that funding comes from and what the rules are for getting that funding. So Code 53 will help get more knowledge base into the funding that comes for emergencies. And then, so communications. Have you had any issues on the P25 code? I know UCA, Utah Communications Authority, just did a big push on new radios and to government and emergency facilities. And from this group here, have there been any issues on radio communication with dispatchers, highway patrol, law enforcement, sheriff's offices? A lot. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go talk. Who are we talking to after?
Yeah, we're going to talk to Matt Montgomery, the fire chief
So, and we're trying to manage some of the information that's out there. UCA is overwhelmed, I think, right now in getting this done. Division of Emergency Management helped try to push out and get some technical aspects done for the communications. We put a survey out to all the emergency managers at the county level, and the sheriff's offices in county to find out what the issues were. I gathered those up and provided a synopsis back up to Commissioner Anderson and fed that back up to UCA. But I want to gather more information where we're still seeing problems and issues. So we'll talk and see where those dead spaces are and what we need to do to fix those dead spaces across the board.
On the flip side, we've tested from Utah Valley calling back,
right,
running off Carbon County Ambulance, and we could actually communicate with dispatch from Utah Valley.
From all there, that's good.
But
so, and I think those are some of the things that we'll work out as we go through, and as we work with radio communications. With mountains and valleys and ridges, there's always going to be some dead space, and so we'll see what we can do to fix some of those as we go along. So really, that's the presentation that we have to talk about emergency management and what the state Division of Emergency Management can help do. And really, it's how can we help get funding down and resources down into the community, into your counties, to support your counties, and keeping that communication line open, so that you have a communication line in order to bring questions, concerns that you might have from your organizations, from your businesses, and then bring them back to the emergency manager, and then up through kind of the chain to help get information down.
So I have a question, if I could. Yeah. If you have a natural disaster A, let's just say in Wellington City, something Wellington can't handle, it's got to go to the next level, we're going to get the county involved, we'll get the state involved. I understand that's how the process goes, but my question is, who has the say on who does what? Let's say we need some dirt moved. We have a landslide across the highway, and there's 3 companies that can come and do this. Who decides? Because you got to make a decision right now. Who's in charge? Who decides? Hey, we're getting Company A to come move this dirt because we got to get the highway open. You don't have time to go through a government process of getting a contractor. So I would hope that that's on the town level and not the state saying thou shalt. Yeah. How does that work? Who decides?
So there are state contracts that are open already, that there's contractors out there that have been approved by the state, that they're a trusted agent, right, that's out there that a local can go to. So if it's small, if it has to stay at the local level, whether it's the town of Wellington and you need help, or the city of Wellington and you need help, or you're pushing that, and if you don't have the funds to do it, then really go to the county level and ask the county, who in the county can help? Do we have agreements already made within the county to hire somebody, or are there assets that in the county? And they already have contact with UDOT assets in the county too that could come help as well. So really that stays at the local side of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll add a little bit of context to that. So at this county level, you have an EOC, right? So we have Justin and Jeremy in Emery County. We have Josh up in the Uinta Basin up at Daggett. I didn't realize that a whole bunch of you are from the Uinta Basin, or else I would have addressed that, although I'm not the LNO for that area. But so at each county, you have an EOC. So they have input from fire, EMS, all of these, the sheriff, police, law enforcement, all of this, the roads. So we make a priority list, like what needs to be done first. If we have the contract to do it, we can do it. If not, we reach out to the state. The state has some contracts. They can send UDOT, like if it's a road and needs debris removal, we can do UDOT. They can come down. We have UDOT that's stationed regionally. They can do that work. It does get a little bit convoluted when it gets to be, movement of creeks or movement of severe, like what they had in Grand County. They had the movement of Mill Creek and that gets a little bit more convoluted, but still, immediate need, the life safety, incident preservation, or environmental preservation, all of that takes precedence, and that's kind of how we make a priority list. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Hey, so the area that team's already built, like, and we talked about the LEPC, those meetings, that they sit and talk, and they have those relationships built already to where they're communicating, and there's communication channels that are opened to say, hey, we had this disaster, we had this landslide in this area, and all those minds come together to say, yep, we can handle that, we can do that here. Any other questions?
I was going to say, if I can lean on you,
Yeah.
a little bit of
Yeah.
an emergency manager myself, and we have an emergency that it's lunchtime, so I'll manage that one. But in all seriousness, are there any other questions? I'm sure you're open to them, right? Has anybody got anything at all? Wow, I'm disappointed. There we go.
A lot of these small cities and towns that obviously are left with the burden of taking care of emergency management for their citizens. They're required to have communication devices and things like that. A lot of them we found do not have the funding to actually purchase those things. We've seen a lot of them go to different funding sources that we never thought that they would. Are some of those grants tailored to purchasing that equipment?
Yeah, and I wish I could answer that better. Whitney might have a better understanding. I think there are some funds out there for helping purchase that, but there's some FEMA rules that we have.
Communication-specific grants, SHSP is pretty much the only one that can fund that. The problem with that is every county is reliant on that program for other things. You run your hazmat teams off of them. Both counties, all 3 counties, have command posts that need maintenance. We have facilities that need maintenance and stuff. So there's other projects that take priority over communication equipment. So you look for other grants. I know Grand County was able to get a grant through the COVID money to do communications. That's how they funded their 800 radios. There's other grants available. I don't know exactly what avenues Carbon and Emery have gone through, but you guys are all turned over now too. So we're always on the lookout for communication funding.
So, and that's one of the things. So we have our mitigation team that does all the grants. And me coming new into the Division of Emergency Management, it's all new to me. And so I'm asking those questions. I go, what money is out there? What are we missing that we've been doing for so long that it's just because we do it, and that's where the money comes from? I'm asking the questions. Where can we go to new, right? What else is out there to try to help to find that money for? Because I know I have family that lives out in San Juan. I have family that lives in these areas, and I talk to them, and I understand and know that there's issues out there in getting it. And it seems like all the money goes to Utah and Salt Lake, Davis, that Wasatch Front area. But how do we get money here? And I've asked the team to look at that. So, anything else? I do appreciate the opportunity to come down, really to introduce Whitney and make sure Whitney's, everybody knows Whitney and can get information to Whitney so that we can help get information down and resources down. So.
I want to emphasize though, please call your emergency managers. Yes, please call your emergency managers. They are the ones that funnel the first information up. So that slide earlier, if you guys need that slide again, we can put it back up. I have contacts for Uinta Basin. If you need any of your emergency managers, we've got that. But it starts local, so make sure you have those contacts. And then my contact's right here. Feel free to ever call me, shoot me a text, email me, anything. So.
Cool. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I won't hold you up no longer. I need 3 favors. Number 1, please invite more people to this. When I talk about spread the email, share it with your friends, invite more people, the topics, touch on those next time you come here. 2, please come to the next meeting. We appreciate you guys being here. Not going to hold lunch up no longer. However, out of our Vernal office is Mike Perkins. He's outside in a camouflage jacket. The 3rd favor I need, please subtly tell him happy birthday when you walk by him. He will hate me for life. So if you guys will do that for me, please do. Thank you for being here.
Right.